So this is the house that I built in Tasmania. I was an owner builder in Tasmania, and if people only want to see the photos and a little bit of commentary of the inside and whatnot, just fast forward to about the 14th minute mark. But now I'll just talk about what it's like to live totally off grid in Tasmania like this. Okay, heading into work again, and I thought I might talk about off-grid living in Tasmania, which is what me and my wife did for 10 years. And this is a story about our experience, the good and the bad. Most of it I think is bad, really, but anyway, I'll tell you why. So anyway, I moved to Tasmania from the mainland of Australia, and I had a little bit of money, and I wanted to set up a place in a really nice part, clean air, and Tasmania is a beautiful place. So anyway, I didn't have enough money to buy the land that I wanted. A lot of the land that was available where I wanted to live was alongside the road. The power was alongside the road, as you can see sort of in front here. But as you went up away from the road, there was no power. So all the land blocks near the road where I wanted to live were super expensive. And they're a lot more expensive now as well, but I just didn't have the money, and I was working as a chef, and banks don't like lending money to hospitality workers in Australia, so it's not like I could have got a loan. So I was renting a place, paying rent, and desperately trying to find our future home base. So everything was out of reach, and I spoke with the local lady who owned the petrol station and milk bar, and I said, look, I really want to buy some land here, but everything's so expensive. Do you know anyone that's just got a small piece? Because I actually wanted 5 acres of land. I wanted a big size land. She said, actually there's a 1 acre piece of land, and they used to use it as a motorcycle track. So the locals used to go to my block of land and ride their motorbikes, and it had all these speed jumps on it, hills of little mounds of dirt and stuff. It looked like a little motocross track, and there was no power up to there, and the road was dirt. It was a terrible road, but it was a road. So anyway, I spoke with the owner, and he said he's willing to sell, and there was a little bit of, Australians are quite hard to negotiate with most of the time, but anyway, I told him, look, this is all the money I've got, and I'm willing to give you this for the land. And he's and eventually he agreed to sell. So I bought the place, and I knew that I had a cost saving of about half. So if I went down to the road, it would have been double. So I sort of got it for half price, and I always had in the back of my mind that there's a saving here, because if I set up solar, paying $20,000 to put in a solar system, I'm going to be well ahead on the savings of the land. So I read up a lot on solar living, off-grid living before I came to Tasmania, and always had this in the back of my mind, but I didn't really like the whole idea of it. I thought it was a bit romanticised, but still, I kept it in the memory bank. And when I bought this land, my wife's like, oh wow, there's no power, and there's no water, and there's no nothing. And I said, don't worry, I'll fix it. So anyway, I got a full-time job, and my wife, and we moved to another part of Tasmania, and this job came with accommodation. So we had a small little house with a job So it was really good, so I could take the cats with me, and it was really good. So anyway, I saved up a little bit of money. We worked there for 2 years, and I thought, okay, I've got $30,000 in the bank. I'll go and see the bank manager. And I said, look, I want to build an off-grid house here. Can you lend me the money? And he said, no. And I said, why? And he said, well, you know, we don't lend on these sort of houses. So what I wanted to build was a sort of like a glorified shed, basically, with solar panels and batteries and things like this. And the bank manager knocked me back straight away. He didn't even want to hear anything, and I was in a bit of a conundrum. So I went back to the drawing board, and I thought, how am I going to do this? So I approached another bank, and I told him my situation, getting the loan to build this house. And he says, well, you can get a personal loan. So the personal loan rate was 10%, but the mortgage rate was about 5 or 6. So I bit the bullet, and I borrowed the money on the personal rate, which is not a smart thing to do, but that was the only thing I could do at the time. So I went and got an owner builder's license. I went to the shed company, and I paid them to erect the shed. So it was a shed with just a shell, nothing inside. So I was still working at this place, and on my days off, which was usually like Tuesday or Wednesday or Monday or Tuesday, I'd slowly do the inside. And in Australia, you can only do renovation works or building works, but you can't do plumbing or electricity. So I had to contract the plumber to do the plumbing into the slab and out to the septic system. The septic system was a special system that is now law in Tasmania, and quite expensive. It's sort of it's an ozone sort of system. I forget what it's called, but yeah, quite expensive. And I got the electrician to install the solar panels and all the wiring. So after that, I just took the money as I needed it from the loan, and just did small jobs whenever I had the time. So it took about 18 months to finish building my house, and as soon as it was finished, we put our notice in where we were working, and we moved in full time, because where I was working the commute was a bit long, so I couldn't keep the job. So anyway, we moved in, really happy, you know. First 2 years, no issues at all, and then problems started to arise. That one battery would go down, a technical issue with the power. Sometimes the power would go out for no reason, and you would never be able to work out why, and the electricians would never be able to work out why. So we had a backup generator, so whenever the batteries were low, we'd start the generator, and basically we'd be burning gasoline to charge the batteries, which is not a good thing. It's not an eco thing, but anyway, that's what you had to do. And we had a house for 10 years, so we lived totally off grid. All our water came off the roof. The excess water, I had a water tank permanently on the back of my ute. Whenever I went into town, I'd fill up the water, come back and pump it into the water tanks. So we had this place for 10 years, and we didn't have an electricity bill, but whenever we had any issues with the power, as soon as the electrician found out it was solar, they would charge you double, just for the fact it's solar, and wouldn't need any extra work, any extra thing of their expertise, but they knew the customers were stuck. So it's not it's not a cost saver. I sort of ran the figures and things like that, and I didn't think I saved any money at all. And I had the headache of not being able to buy appliances that I really wanted. Whenever I'd have the computer, I would have to totally shut the computer down whenever I wasn't using it, to conserve power, which isn't really good on the monitors and the screens, and it wasn't really a comfortable way to live. And I see off-grid living on YouTube channels, and it's sort of seems really rosy, but I lived it for 10 years and it ain't all that, in my opinion. I don't think it's that much cheaper. The only reason it was cheaper for me is because I was able to buy the land cheaper. But as for operational cost of while you're living, I don't think there is a saving. And if there's a saving, it'll be minimal. And is it worth the disruption of living sort of like a normal life with normal power? I don't think so. It's not nice when you're having a shower and all of a sudden the power goes out, and you know, you've got shampoo everywhere and you have to dry yourself, go outside, start the generator. These sort of things happen. And I always thought, well, it's great to be totally off grid and have your battery bank, and if the power ever went out, I've still got power and everyone else doesn't. Well, in the 10 years I had it, it only happened once, and it was for less than an hour that everybody else didn't have power except me. So totally not worth it in my view. I see a lot of people put solar panels on their houses, especially here in Japan. They put their solar panel on and they connect it to the grid, and if the power ever went out, they would have no power as well. So I don't really see the big benefit in doing the solar, unless it's sort of like an emergency backup power. And a lot of people don't use it that way. They use it sort of maybe to get a discount off their electricity. They make a bit of power, put it in, and get a partial refund. So anyway, that's my experience. The reason why I did it the way I did is because of the land cost, but also in Tasmania, there's a lot of off-grid living. People have what they call shacks, and a shack is just a ramshackle house on a block of land somewhere in the bush, and they're perfectly legal, but they're not allowed to be lived in for more than 3 months a year. So I could have just built a shack, lived there, but it wouldn't have been legal to live there permanently. But a lot of people do in Tasmania. And the other issue is, if I ever wanted to move, like I have to Japan, I could never sell it for a decent price. I could only sell it for what the land value was. So that wasn't an option for us. I wanted to build something that was comfortable, and that if I ever wanted to move, somebody else would want to live there. And I sold my house very quickly. I sold it in 3 or 4 days. And if I've got a photo, I'll put it here. I'll just stop the video. So here was the view from my house in Tasmania. And here we have installation of the septic, preparation of the footings, the erection of the shed house, and that's when I just started to do the inside. Gyprock walling and wooden roof, wooden ceiling. Here we have the solar system being put in by the electrician while I was doing the inside the house. Bit more progress on the inside. And there's the upstairs after I've gyprocked it in. And that's what it looked like after I've just covered all the beams with pine. start of the install of the kitchen. I just got the plumber to do the rough plumbing, and I put in a sort of like a chef style kitchen. I bought some shoji doors from Japanash in Sydney, and I got them shipped to Tasmania, and I had shoji doors. I had a little shoji room here. You can see just how lovely the view is outside. Have a view from the inside, look in the opposite directions. So as you see, we're right up on the hill, and the road's way down there in the gully. So that's the main reason we had to do the solar. It's the only option we had, but we had great views. So this was part of our solar system, out back, off-grid. And that was our battery bank underneath the stairs. Power board and circuit breaker. That's my old Hilux, just in the driveway here. But have a look, really beautiful views. This is where I used to work up here. This was, or it probably still is, a dairy farm. This was my wood stack, and I got some shipping containers where I used to just put mowers and whippersnippers and whatever, just storage. It was much easier to get shipping containers, put them on the land, because you didn't need council approval. Otherwise I'd have to go through the building process to put a garage there. So this was the cheapest and best option at the time. So here at the back of the house, I had gas for the kitchen, and there's the gas heater there, and just here you can see here, that's where the generator was plugged into the house to charge the batteries. And this was my pump set up here, and that would pump water into the house, or I would reverse it and pump water into the tank. So this one here directly from the house, and this one was standalone, and if I really needed water, I'd refill back in either way. Old shot of the front of the house. My wife built this retaining wall. Not a bad effort at all. That was my wood stack at its peak in Tasmania. So that was about a year's worth there, year and a half worth of firewood there. And here's a shot of the end of the property. Later we put all fruit trees all through here. And here's the secondary pump. Goes straight into the bathroom. This one's a better shot of everything. Gas hot water, backup generator, and the pumps. Tank overflow pipe, required by law in Australia. We used this as a living room. We had it quite high seating up here, so you could look around at all the view. I had a 360-degree view all around these mountains. This was the main bad boy, doing everything. Just another quick photo at the end of the block. All these photos were taken before we planted all the fruit trees. There's Nelson. You've seen him in a couple of videos. He's got his winter coat on in Tassie, and that's my old Hilux as well. I love that car. So I bought quite a few trees that were already adult. I didn't buy them as smaller trees. Quite expensive. I think they were like $150 each. But anyway, got the property up, the gardens to look mature within 3 years, so it was great. So this is at the back of my property. All this area here was all sheep farming, and a couple of times my dog got out and he was chasing the sheep everywhere, and it was lucky he didn't get shot. So this is nearing completion before we moved in. So not too bad a job. I did a couple of extra things. I put some more trim along here and whatever. But that's pretty much what the house looked like inside. Pressure activated flow of the water. When the pump would switch, when you turn the tap, the pump would turn on and water would come straight out through here. And you could manually shut it off at the top. Pretty cool view from the bottom corner of my block in Tassie. And there's a shot of everything under the staircase. Battery bank, charge controllers, inverters. Okay, so here we have the gas line coming in from the back, and this is shut off the gas, and this was a gas freezer. So we had a deep freeze and it ran on LPG gas, which was pretty cool. Very expensive though. It was $6,000 or $7,000 for this freezer. But when you're off grid, things cost more. So that was what it was like. Really beautiful views. And I was able to sell it, and the people who bought it, really into off-grid living. They liked the setup and things. They're sort of hardy people, but it'd be interesting to hear what their experience is at the moment, because they've had it for 4 years now. So anyway, that's my experience. It's not for everybody. It really wasn't for us, although we did it. I wouldn't do it again unless I was forced to. I had no other option. But anyway, that's one of the reasons why I did it, and probably a lot of reasons why others do it. It's mainly for financial reasons, not so much for ideological reasons. But anyway, as always, talk to you about the video.